now we are going to start talking about Kohlberg's theory. And Kohlberg's theory, we're going to actually also do an in-class activity. I am going to collect your in-class. I will ask you to write your names on it so I can take the attendance and look over them. However, if you wish to, I strongly suggest you can take a picture of it if you have a phone with you, because I may actually ask a question like it in the exam. So, Kohlberg, as most of you know, I know that you might have even studied Kohlberg's theory for your university entrance exams. And no, in my time, it was actually included. And so he has 3 main stages, and within these stages, he has these sub-stages, right? And so for him, though, what we are seeing is the benchmark here is the convention. Convention meaning what is it appropriate in the society? What does the society expect? There is the pre-conventional level, and there is the post-conventional or principled level, mostly known as post-conventional level. And so we are going to go over each of these stages, and then we're going to do the activity together. And so in Kohlberg, I know this is too small, but this should be from your book, so you have it, and you can also take a picture. I actually included it at the back as a cheat sheet too. And so here, in the pre-conventional level, stage 1, heteronymous morality, we see that children are taking an egocentric perspective. They don't really consider the interests of others or recognize that they differ from one's own. Their actions are considered in terms of physical consequences, so they're consequence-based evaluation. They have consequence-based evaluations. And sometimes they confuse the authorities' perspective with their own. And so this is understandable because they have a general problem with perspective taking, right? And we saw this in theory of mind too. They think that everybody knows what they know, for example, right? And here they're mostly trying to obey so that they will be free of damage. And in stage 2, instrumental morality, we see a tendency to follow rules when it suits one's needs, when it benefits one person. And fairness is seen as equal exchange rather than this mutual reciprocity. So tit for tat, if somebody hits you, you hit back, for example. And then in the conventional stage, we see the good child morality, where this is living up to what is expected. So obeying the rules so that others, so this time there's a perspective change. Others view you as a good person. So the kid is interested in that. They care for others. And they also value trust, loyalty, respect, and gratitude. In stage 4, law and order, children at this point are thinking laws of a society are to basically maintain social order, and one should uphold the law. So they're still not thinking that laws could be changed if it's not benefiting the majority of people. If it's a law, it needs to be preserved. And here they're thinking about the individual and the whole group. Yes? The golden rule is basically belief in the goal. If somebody basically does something wrong, they are going to be punished eventually. And in societal contract reasoning, we get to the post-conventional level. Now, mind you, according to this theory and according to the empirical research done, not everybody gets to this stage. So the idea is that we are so many people in this classroom. If we were given Kohlberg's dilemma, our responses may not reflect these. Of course, now that you are studying it, your responses will reflect it. Everybody will be at stage 6. But they have done it with both university students and also high school students who have not heard of Kohlberg's stages before. And it doesn't seem like everybody gets here. And so social contract reasoning is being aware that people hold a variety of values and opinions. And here, I mean, it's the beginnings of rules can change, laws can change, and they can change in order to benefit the society at large. And here we're thinking about the social contract to act for the welfare of the group. And if the law is not serving the welfare of the group, then it can change. Yes?
You told us not all the people are arriving, reaching the level 3, but isn't it related to theory of mind since being aware that people will
Theory of mind, if it would come, it would probably come here at stage 1 to stage 2 because there are 2 perspectives there. But in stage 3, you're now even transcending these 2 perspectives and thinking about global ideals, global morality. And so in the universal ethical principles, this is following self-chosen ethical principles. This is like those people who sacrificed themselves while they were trying to smuggle the Jewish children out. It's basically thinking, what is ethical, what is the universal human ethicals, and how could my behavior actually be in line with those, even if it hurts me or harms me, right? And so Kohlberg famously used this dilemma, Heinz's dilemma. And here the dilemma goes, in Europe, and there are very cute YouTube videos of this, by the way, if you wanted to watch it. In Europe, a woman was near death from cancer. One drug might save her, a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The druggist was charging $2,000, 10 times what the drug cost him to make. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could get together only half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay it later. But the druggist said no. The husband got desperate and broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. Should the husband have done that? The question with Kohlberg's dilemma is not whether you say yes or no, really, up to a certain point, but how you reason about it. So how do you get to that answer is what Kohlberg is looking at, because that tells us about your moral reasoning, right? And so there are several different questions. Should Heinz have stolen the drug? Would it change anything if Heinz did not love his wife? What if the person dying was a stranger? Would it make any difference? It wasn't his wife. Remember, because we're thinking about social contracts, and a marriage between a wife and a husband is a social contract in itself, too. That's why he's probing this question. Should the police arrest the chemist for murder if the woman died? But we say no to that. So, okay. So stage 1, punishment and obedience. You see, see what you have here in the first bullet, they're always the yes, he should have stolen the drug. In the second one, no, he shouldn't steal. So these are anti-stealing and pro-stealing answers from research. These are real answers that have been classified as such. So in stage 1, punishment and obedience says if you let your wife die, you will be blamed for not spending the money to help her, and there will be an investigation of you and the druggist for your wife's death. So this is thinking about the consequences of what might happen to a person if they did it, right? And so it's more focused on obedience, and in the absence of obedience, what kind of punishment would be awaiting the person. You shouldn't steal the drug because you'll be caught and sent to jail if you do. If you do get away, you'd be scared that the police would catch up with you any minute. Again, the focus is much on this punishment issue. In stage 2, what we have is if Heinz decides to risk jail to save his wife, this is instrumental purpose. It's his life he's risking. He can do whatever he wants with it. And the same goes for the druggist. It's up to him to decide what he wants to do. Everybody out for their own. He can do whatever he wants. Druggists can do whatever they want. Heinz is running more risk than it's worth to save a wife who's near death. His life is more important. Going to jail is worse. So there's an instrumental. Like, how much will this benefit Heinz? Stage 3, morality of interpersonal cooperation. No one will think you're bad if you steal. Remember, this is more about how do they perceive me? Am I a good person? Are they thinking I'm a good citizen? No one will think you're bad if you steal the drug, but your family will think you are an inhuman husband if you don't. If you let your wife die, you will never be able to look anyone in the face again. Probably ask someone from around here for this. Kimsenin suratına bakamayacaksın. It is very Turkish movie kind of reasoning, but yes. It isn't just the druggist who will think you're a criminal. Everyone else will too. What do others think about me, right? You'll feel bad thinking how you brought dishonor on your family and on yourself. Ayıp. Social order maintained. So this is upholding law and order. Laws are there to maintain order. Heinz has a duty to protect his wife's life. It's a vow he took in marriage. But it's wrong to steal, so he would have to take the drug with the idea of paying the drug case for it and accepting the penalty for breaking the law later. So let him get it because he's in a social contract. He promised his wife to be there for her, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, right? So let Heinz honor that code, but he also has to honor the code of society by going to jail and facing the consequences. Here, another one would be, it's a natural thing for Heinz to want to save his wife, but even if his wife is dying, it is his duty as a citizen to uphold the law. If everyone starts breaking the law in a jam, there'd be no civilization, just crime and violence. See how, like, these are different answers, but they're categorized on the same stage? Stage 5, the social contract. Although there's a law against stealing, so in stage 5 and stage 6, you don't have anti-answers. So everybody kind of seems to think that you should steal. But how do they reason? Although there's a law against stealing, the law wasn't meant to violate a person's right to life. If Heinz is persecuted for stealing, the law needs to be reinterpreted. So you see, when you pass this last broad stage with stage 5 and stage 6, you basically get the idea that laws can change, right? Right before then, you're basically getting, you know, we should uphold the law even if it hurts us, kind of thinking. If Heinz is persecuted for stealing, the law needs to be reinterpreted, take into account situations in which it goes against people's natural right to keep on living. And stage 6, the universal ethical principle. It does not make sense to put respect for property above respect for life itself. People could live together without private property at all. It's kind of a Smurf village kind of idea. Even in Smurf village, they all have their own. By the way, has anybody seen Smurfs? Yeah. Is it good? I'm going to see it. No?
My friend said it was really good.
Ya bu kadar. Lady says no. Anybody else? No, don't see it. Sınavımız var. Ha, sınavımız var. Okay. Yeah, of course, I have a lot of things. Mine is a dream. I may not be able to see it. I dream about seeing things and then they disappear from the movie theater. Respect for human life and personality is absolute, and accordingly, people have a mutual duty to save one another from dying. So what happens? We are now thinking about human universal principles about human rights, right? At this point, it's no longer really concerned about this law, that law, but like at the core of it, this is the issue at hand, this person's saying, and reasoning at stage 6 level. Now, for stage 6, when you look at like anywhere, like for examples, they always say Mother Teresa had stage 6. I don't know if you have to be Mother Teresa to have stage 6, but it definitely is a way of reasoning that goes above and beyond social contracts. And as you can see, Kohlberg's stages actually seem to overlap. It's not a very clean, like, you know, 10-year-olds think this way, 20-year-olds think this way. Instead, what we get is as the age increases, the earlier ones disappear. So as aging, thank God, as age increases, for example, nobody is upholding this yellow one is stage 1, right? So at one point, we get less and then no answers of this kind. Stage 2 is this red one. As you see, it decreases. Stage 3 is this green one. Stage 4, stage 5. There's no stage 6. Yes? No. So although they are called stages, it's not like a ladder. Like we thought about, like in Piaget's stages, you need to pass one in order to get. In here too, you pass one to get to the other, but not all people pass all 6 stages. They may stop at stage 4. Most of us, it is said, are around stage 4, by the way. We may disagree, but that's what research says. Most people move through stages in order, and development of moral reasoning is slow and gradual. Yes, few individuals move past stage 4. But real-life moral reasoning, and this has been a criticism towards Kohlberg's methodology too, and consequently the interpretation of the results he got from the experiments and others have gotten from similar experiments, is that a person's moral reasoning varies according to from one dilemma to the next, from one context to the next, whether their reasoning may be about versus people who are closer to them and the like. So it is very much affected by the factors related to the situation, their cognition, and also their emotions that are unique to the problem at hand. Are there sex differences in moral reasoning? Of course, if there were sex differences, what would we expect? What kind of sex difference would you expect if there were sex differences? Yes?
Females are more sacrificed than
Yes. We would expect that. I'm not saying that's true. We, on general, the intuition might be that we might expect females to be, yes?
At first, it seems to me like that, but when I think about females, we are more likely to obey the rules, and we are more likely to go on through life. But males are more, they don't care so much about what is expected from them.
Are we more obedient?
What I mean is, we are more likely to go into the way. Like, for example, I prefer to come to the classes, but a male don't really care about coming to the class.
Mohammed has been here every single time. Here's Ramazan, he's coming for the second time. I thought that he wouldn't come, but he's here with his tie. He's going to work afterwards. Yeah, and if I could, I would give him 5 bonus points just because he's coming.
I think you can hear because he's the second male.
Huh?
I mean, to encourage males to participate in psychology.
There is also 2 others who are hiding behind. Yes. I don't know. I mean, we're making blanket generalizations about men as well as women too. We're at very, very dangerous territory right now. Well, they weren't really thinking about. Okay, Gilligan is the one who actually approached this, and I'm just like holding on to this slide because what I'm going to talk about is on the next slide. But she approached it from a different perspective. She said women are usually carers. They care for their kids, for example. They take care of their kids. They care for their partners, their husbands. They care for their own elderly mothers, fathers. And so they are given this caring role by society. And because of that, how they think about moral issues is less influenced by what they think about laws and law and order, and more about care. And so they may approach these dilemmas from a different perspective, and their reasoning might evidence more of an attention to caring rather than an attention to laws and order. Well, what has been found is that both sexes use both orientations, by the way. I mean, many gross oversimplifications of sexes, we actually do injustice to men too, although they might be a little bit more advantageous in society in certain respects. But we kind of take away certain things from them too. Don't maybe allow them to actually express emotion as much as women can. We don't accept that. We don't accept. I mean, I have had so far, and don't do it. In my 4 years at Bilkent University, I can probably count 5 or 6 students crying at my office. All of them were women. I don't have had yet a male student walk in and start crying. Yes, that's true. Every 60 students, there are 4 to 5 male students. So I need to stay here for 30 years. Actually, maybe, yeah. And I don't want anyone to cry at my office. That's not an unreasonable request. I mean, if something happens, you can share, obviously. But don't cry for grades. And so, yes. And so we are also doing injustice to men too when we do these gross oversimplifications. But it seems like even when women come from a care perspective, their answers are actually not categorized differently than men's. If anything, women seem to be actually passing from one stage to the next faster in developmental time. But there aren't, again, significant changes between the sexes as to whether men or women are more developed in moral reasoning. Influences on moral reasoning, personalities. Yes, Sevgi. Like they don't. It's not that we find more women who have passed to stage 5 and 6 as compared to men. And so, what are the influences on moral reasoning? Good news is that I probably will finish this chapter today. Very excited. And so, personality might be a factor. Those people who have, for example, higher flexible thinking, open-minded people, may actually fare better when their answers to these dilemmas are evaluated. Obviously, they're taking in more abstract concepts and thinking in ways that transcend what is socially appropriate, which is the law and order. Child-rearing practices also affect people who come from caring and supportive families, people who have families that discuss moral concerns also seems. So there is a discussion of morality at home. Schooling is important. Actually, schooling seems to be important. People with higher levels of schooling actually do proceed higher on these 6 stages. But schooling also introduces you to, for example, complex texts. You read novels. You discuss different characters. So if you think about it, schooling is not only also about whether you know calculus or not. It also gives you this wealth of information that our civilization and others have created, and that is mostly abstract, and you get well versed in discussing different perspectives. Hence, it is no wonder, I think. The peer interaction also helps, especially having peers of various backgrounds also helps. And the culture at large, whether it's a culture that values, for example, collective harmony versus individuals' rights, might also affect how people answer or think about these questions. Does this? Yes, of course.
It's a little bit difficult to understand. Do collective cultures encourage people to steal the things or not steal the things because of the laws?
I think we can't say whether they say yes or no, but their reasoning shows more concern for upholding the collective rather than the individual.
So they would say that the law is more important than the individual. Because they won't, they can't.
But law could be important, but think about in cases of upholding the honor. So it might be that one thinks the code of their little culture, of the village, of the clan. Biz ne diyoruz? Klanın Türkçesi ne? Töre, ha. Töre'yi arıyorum. Yes. Töre, which is an informal rule of a small group, usually a band for like a family. They might think that those are as real as the government enforced rules too. So we have to see the nuance in it. I will not. So in this course, I try to give you all perspectives. But as a person and as a scientist, I have my own perspectives as well. But I try to refrain as much as I can from flavoring, except when I tell you like things you shouldn't do as a parent. Like don't drink when you're pregnant. I think I am allowed to say that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that I have very little faith in this collectivistic versus individualistic distinction. Very little faith. We could argue all day. I could buy you a beer. You could buy me a coffee. I have a lot to say on it, but I won't steal time from this class by doing that. So I won't be able to tell you that one has been found to be better. The individualistic cultures, because we are going to see this in 350. There's a culture week, and we're going to discuss this thoroughly. Sometimes assessment methods are introduced within a culture. For example, an American researcher from Nebraska comes up with a scale, which is fine, but then we take it, just translate it, and start adapting it to different cultures without actually caring about what it means in a deeper sense. And then we get these distinctions, and then these are self-labeled. The North American Europeans have called it individualistic. Others call it collectivistic, and they've called the other side collectivistic. I know, as a member of a seemingly collectivist culture, I know that there's a huge amount of variability within cultures, right? And so I won't tell you more about whether I actually support this or not. But you can read your book and see what it says. Developing civic responsibility. Okay, so we talked about morality. Morality translates into our behavior. So if you reason in a moral way, then you probably act in ways that are responsible towards your whole group. Actually react more deeply as compared to social conventions. Adults explain social conventions less and they demand obedience. But here adults also spend a lot of time explaining rights and feelings of victims. They put more emphasis when they are describing it to children. And then there are personal matters too. So you have social conventions, moral imperatives, and personal matters. Personal matters, they're not right or wrong. They are your personal choices for something, right? These are, for example, we are seeing a liberation of hair color in the past 5 years, 3 years. We have different hair colors on campus that are not naturally possible, right? So, people used to go for naturally possible hair colors, like I dyed my hair blonde kind of thing. But now I dyed my hair green, purple, any color you can imagine is okay, right? And it's a matter of personal choice. There is no right, there is no wrong. It is completely up to the person. Children actually do develop. From 2 to 12, they actually, we see developments in each of their understanding and their ability to discriminate these. But even at the youngest ages, even at 3, 4 years of age, children judge moral transgressions as more severe than transgressions in these. So they have a deeper understanding that this is actually the core issue. When this is violated, it means it has more significance than the other two. So of course, in order to, so when moral reasoning translates into behavior, we expect children to be able to control self, right? Because not everything we do because we want to do it. Sometimes we feel that it is for the good of the group, and that's why it's moral. Now, self-control is here in this chapter, but we saw this in executive functioning at chapter 7. So I'm actually really going over very similar things, and self-control, sometimes called effortful control, is taken to be a component of executive functions too. So these are not two very unrelated things that you have learned. Compliance emerges from 12 to 18 months, and it keeps developing too. We know the executive function actually shows significant developments throughout middle childhood and keeps developing into adolescence. It keeps developing not only because the prefrontal cortex keeps developing, and it's highly dependent biologically on brain functions, but also children learn cognitive strategies, so metacognitive abilities of how to regulate one's thoughts and behavior actually play a part. So there are, though, individual differences. Temperament, parenting are important. Also, biological differences are possible too. It is believed that there are 2 processing systems for self-control. See, I could have just said executive control and it would have held, because you will see in 350 we'll talk about hot and cool systems for executive functions. It's the same thing, okay? And hot system is basically about emotionally charged situations, right? And you know, hot system usually, for example, is considered in gambling, right? Because you are so invested in winning will make you happy, that controlling your behavior in situations where there's personal gain usually involves the hot system. The cool system is more cognitive problems, right? Cool system is active when you are solving an exam on math and you are trying to stop yourself from making calculation errors. Cool system is working. But you will see, we will talk about it, no problem is only hot versus only cool. It usually requires both, but some problems require more hot system than the cool. Other problems require more cool system than the hot. Okay. Aggression, again, next semester we will spend 1 week on aggression and bullying. Students usually actually really like that chapter. But we see aggression in infancy, starting 18 months. And there are two forms of aggression: instrumental, sometimes called proactive aggression, versus hostile, and sometimes called reactive. Now here, in the proactive one, it's meant to help the child to get something he or she wants. So kick your friend and get the ball, kind of thing, right? In the reactive, it is meant to hurt someone else. Someone has already taken the ball, maybe it was their turn, and you get upset. You don't expect the ball back. But yes. See, this is one that I changed, by the way, because I think this is a book slide, and I didn't think that it was correct. And so here, these two, I changed this, if you have the slides. And it should be in the correct order. If you haven't printed the slides, it's on Moodle with this last format. Physical aggression is always direct. Verbal and relational aggression could be direct or indirect. And verbal aggression is basically name-calling, saying mean things, making somebody feel bad, but by verbally, not by kicking or hitting, teasing. Relational is making that this is something that the female kind does more than the male kind, it seems. It is basically, I won't be your best friend. I won't invite you to my birthday party. So you're no longer somebody's friend, so I won't be friends with you either. This is relational aggression where the aggressor is aiming to hurt the target person's relations with others. In early and middle childhood, I have 3 more minutes. In early and middle childhood, instrumental declines, hostile increases. Boys may be more physically aggressive, and this gives the wrong impression that girls are not aggressive. I have 95% of my class here is women. I just want head nods. Do you think that girls can be aggressive?
Yes.
Yes. And the thing is, though, in a classroom setting, you know, think about 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. The poor boys keeps getting punished by the teacher because their aggression is very physical and you can see it. You know, Sinan kicks Kerem. But the teacher will never know that you are calling a friend a name, you are kicking that friend out of a friend group, and the teacher can do very little actually to interfere too. In adolescence, you see less aggression. By this point, highly aggressive children may turn into delinquent adolescents. So delinquent meaning adolescents who break the law. It could be minor stealing. It could be driving underage, for example, driving without a driver's license. It could be all of those things. Driving underage without a driver's license and drunk. Yes. And so delinquency peaks in middle adolescence. And also, individual differences in aggression are usually lasting. That doesn't mean that if you have a 4-year-old who's aggressive, you shouldn't take it to mean that my Kerem will always be, Kerem Can, will always be aggressive. There's nothing I can do about parenting. Good, supportive classroom actually helps a lot. So you can fine-tune this. Sources of aggression, obviously family is a source. Coercive interaction patterns, for example, mothers who say, I won't love you anymore. That is a lie, arkadaşlar. Never, ever. Yes, when you become a parent, ben seni artık sevmeyeceğim, I won't love you anymore, is a big lie. The thing is, even if you tried not to love your child, you probably will keep loving the child. So let's get over it because it hurts more than anything else you say. It hurts and doesn't bring any positive behavior back, because it traumatizes the child so much that the child doesn't know what to do. You know what I mean? Because you are the secure base for the child. When you say I don't, but the thing is, again, your child, if you do have a child, at one point in time, that child will look you in the eye and say, I don't like you. Just prepare yourself that it's coming. The child doesn't mean what you think he or you think she or he is saying. You can get back to the child and say, well, my mind won't change. You still have to eat your dinner, but I will always love you. It won't change, right? And so love withdrawal, power assertion, withdrawal of human privileges, human needs, not giving a child food, for example. Like one of the worst things that you can do in discipline that promotes aggression. For example, bu akşam sana yemek yok. No food for you tonight. Basic needs, shelter, food, right? These you don't withdraw. Because when you withdraw them, the child has no depth in order to produce positive behaviors, right? They just don't know what to do. And you are the only one, you're the secure base that they rely on. When you pull that carpet from underneath them, they have no ground to stand on. So expecting morally mature behavior from a child who's getting a lot of love withdrawal, power assertion, physical punishment, inconsistent discipline and neglect would be, given that I have 2 minutes, I will go on. But come to me after class if you have questions. Social cognitive deficits and distortions. These kids also see world as hostile, believe that aggression works, especially if they've also witnessed it at home. And they may have overly high self-esteem. Low SES, we see more aggression, but this might, because of this is not an economic problem, it's a community problem, right? Less supervision, parents working more jobs, broken families, dangerous neighborhoods. This is a constellation of risk factors. Culture, ethnic and political conflicts. A child who is growing up in war, seeing death, destruction, injury, loss, experiencing loss, may be more aggressive. I mean, there's nothing more natural than that either. And these are the last slides. Basically what it's saying is, when you're trying to treat aggression, the best thing that works is coming up with systematic theory interventions, where you target not only the child, but you target the child within the family, within the peer group, at school, and you try to get to each of these contexts for that child or young person and make significant changes. Thank you very, very much. I'll see you Wednesday.